Artist and entrepreneur Luana Rubin is here to talk about quilts with meaning. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm hoping to share with you my passion for making quilts that have a message in them.
Well, you've done some beautiful work, and I know a lot of artists are finding a way to communicate their deep feelings or opinions about things through their work, and you know, quilters have done that for ages, haven't they?
Well, and artists have.
Yes.
And of course, quilt artists have just taken up that baton and run with it, I think. And I feel like there's so many things that you can say visually. You know, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Right.
And a lot of times, words that cannot be spoken can be put into an image.
Right, absolutely. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the piece behind us and what your passion was there?
Oh, I'd love to. So this piece was made, actually I was requested to make this piece for the United Nations in Geneva. It was a wonderful project called Water is Life. And it was started by the U.S. Embassy in Rome. So this piece has traveled from the UN to the embassy, and then it's traveling around the U.S. now. And it tells a story of what happened in Durango, Colorado, when a mine basically exploded into the river and turned the water orange, and a lot of people downstream got sick. And so I wanted to put that into an image. Sometimes people have a hard time hearing the words about what happened, but it's easier to look at the visual of it.
Right. Now I noticed too all the words that are written in. What are the words that you've quilted into the piece?
Well, in the orange part of the water, I've quilted with turquoise color the rivers and the lakes and the communities downstream that were affected by this event.
Okay.
And then into the black, I've stitched with red some of the toxins that went into the water.
And what's nice about it too is that I think it stands alone as a piece of art. It's beautiful. But the closer you get and the more you look at the details, it does have that strong message that you want to communicate.
Right. My intention was that you see it from a distance, maybe from across a crowded room. You see some of the mountains and the beautiful forest, and you get closer and you see the story, and then you get very, very close and you see the words that are stitched into the bottom.
Right.
And a lot of people end up standing in front of the quilt, leaning over, looking closely at the words that are stitched in.
So sometimes if you do a quilt that's about something important to you, it ends up giving you a lot of publicity as an artist, too, if it gets used by that cause.
That's right. And I found that if you donate a portion of proceeds from the sale of your quilt in the future, that organization will give you even more exposure. So instead of giving it to a gallery, you know, you can let the organization promote your piece.
And then you can feel good like you've made a difference by showing a lot of people what you're thinking and feeling, as well as a monetary contribution, maybe.
And a lot of people tell me after they see my work that they have tears in their eyes or they burst out crying because it touches them so deeply. So then, I don't want to make people cry, but I do want people to feel things. I want them to feel the emotion of the message.
Right, absolutely. Okay, well, let's look at the polar bear here.
Yeah. This is my most recent piece, and I'm really excited about this. This is called Polar Bear Eclipsed. I lead tours up to see the polar bears because I'm very concerned about what's happening to them. And after my last trip, I took a bunch of photos and I had some very close personal encounters with bears. This was from a photo that I took.
But they weren't too close of an encounter.
Well, I didn't get eaten, so apparently not.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And then we had the eclipse, which was the event of the decade, I would say. So at that time, I was making this piece, and I thought, wow, I'd like to combine those two ideas. You know, the polar bears are being eclipsed. And because of my trips up north, I have friends who are polar bear researchers, and they give me information about what's happening to the polar bears. So that's where I stitch the information into the quilt.
Oh, so I can see the red stitching down there at the bottom is things that you know from the researchers.
Yes, exactly. So again, you know, what I want to happen with this piece is people see it from a distance, they're drawn in, and then they look closely and they see there's yet another message on the bottom.
Right. And I love how you framed the bear's head with the eclipse. It really draws you into the focal point on the quilt.
Right.
Which is great.
And you can see, again, the complementary colors that are used, and then the raw edge and the stitching over the raw edge over very clean lines of the eclipse in the background. So I use a lot of contrast and different types of contrast to really attract the eye.
And he looks really fuzzy because you've brought the threads out into that background.
Yeah, he almost looks like my dog. You know, he looks like you could go up and pet him, but don't do that.
Yeah, and I love the purple touches in there, too.
Well, when you're up in the Arctic, you know, the shadows are blue and purple. And of course, the light is golden. So the combination, again, that's a complementary tone. So
It can
the
be really
yellow and
tricky
the
to do a
purple.
white animal, though, and you did a beautiful job on him.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So this one.
So this is an image of my hometown in Boulder, Colorado, and we have a beautiful park. It's kind of the iconic view of Boulder, which is Chautauqua, and that was named after the original Chautauqua in New York. It was an arts colony, and it's grown into a great arts community, and it's a sanctuary for our community. And so this is, when people come to visit Boulder, this is where they go. And so I wanted to make a piece for a show at our art center, and that was last year, and this piece was for the Chautauqua.
Great.
And this will also be sold to benefit the Chautauqua.
And it kind of reminds me of pop art a little bit up at the top, all the bright colors. And I love also how you used fabrics with a lot of visual texture in them, in the foliage.
Right. Well, you know, we artists, we fiber artists, we collect those fabrics, and when the right time comes, we pull them out and use them in things like this. And so these are commercial prints, but these are batiks. So really it's more about the texture and the color of what I have in my stash rather than, oh, I have to use only batiks or only prints.
Yeah. So now tell me about this piece.
This is really the first piece that I made along these lines. This was for the National Park project, which has been traveling for several years now.
To celebrate their anniversary?
Right, and actually it was at the Library of Congress, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this piece and the piece behind us, they're both going back to traveling exhibits after this show. And so this is a bobcat from Arches National Park. And actually the photo of the bobcat I got from a wildlife sanctuary in Colorado that takes animals that people have tried to raise in their garage or their backyard, and they rescue them and bring them to the sanctuary. So when this sells, after it's been raising awareness for the national parks, it will benefit that organization.
Oh, how wonderful. I'm noticing too how densely you free motion quilted to add the fur on the bobcat.
Right.
And much more loosely in the background too.
That was a lot of fun. And of course I combined the two images, image of the arch and then the image of the bobcat in the foreground.
To bring it all together.
And the complementary colors.
Wonderful. Well, do you have any advice for people who want to make a quilt about something that's important to them?
Well, start with your heart, because if you're going to make a series of quilts, it has to be something that you're not going to get tired of. You can pick a particular organization or a particular cause. And I find that I tend to work in similar colors, as you can see. I was surprised that when I look at all of them together that's the case. But sometimes a color can tell a story too, like the red stitching in the water or the red stitching here. And well, I think having a close relationship with those organizations is great. So if you have a local organization, or if you live in a big city and you can find the national headquarters for one of those organizations and have a close relationship, then they're likely to give you more exposure.
Right. And quilters really have to remember that they are artists.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.